And the doctors, there's a couple things happened. One, the doctors at the time said, you can't heal from chronic pain. So uh, that was devastating to me at the time. Uh, I have a science background, and um, my understanding at the time was they're trained in an area of specialty that I'm not. Therefore, I bow to their expertise. And I also had this training in just basic research science. I was trained as a kind of a basic research scientist. So I understood the landscape of like how you do that and what's involved. And anyway, I was very devastated by that prognosis. And I went into this very deep, dark space, and I really went through all those stages that of grief that are talked about, except the last one, which was acceptance. I never accepted that prognosis. I had an aha moment instead, which was, oh, they've forgotten their basic science.
Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining us. You've been through quite a bit. I'm assuming that because of what you've been through, you've done an awesome lot of self-healing as well. So we're going to go into that. But before we start, I'd just like to ask you what happened before that led you to this point where you are now?
Oh, well, I was a chronic pain sufferer for most of my life, um, and a part of that chronic pain is actually a habit. It creates a habit in the body. So I was suffering from a kind of addiction, really. I mean, I had a physical issue, but it was the way the brain was processing all of it that created this habit. And the doctors, there's a couple things happened. One, the doctors at the time said, you can't heal from chronic pain. So that was devastating to me at the time. Uh, I have a science background, and my understanding at the time was they're trained in an area of specialty that I'm not. Therefore, I bow to their expertise. And I also had this training in just basic research science. I was trained as a kind of a basic research scientist. So I understood the landscape of like how you do that and what's involved. And anyway, I was very devastated by that prognosis. And I went into this very deep, dark space, and I really went through all those stages that of grief that are talked about, except the last one, which was acceptance. I never accepted that prognosis. I had an aha moment instead, which was, oh, they've forgotten their basic science, right? Paradigm shift. There are no facts in science. It's all probabilities. They didn't leave any room for you might, it was no, you can't. It was kind of like that, cut and dry. So I knew that was another error that they were making. And the other part was that I understood that they were operating in a model. And the model has constraints and parameters and assumptions. And within that pronouncement, their assumption was she can't heal. Well, that's interesting to me. How are you supposed to, as a patient, how are you supposed to heal in the face of that, of your doctor saying you can't? So the assumption is she can't. The question that was never asked was, why isn't she healing? Because of that assumption, right? So I knew we were in kind of fair territory. We were in kind of the thinking there was not, it wasn't as precise as kind of the way I was trained. And so, because one of the things we look at is what are our assumptions, right? And what's the model? And so I knew that they were telling me more about the model that they were working in than they were actually telling me about the body's ability to heal. So that was an awakening. You talk about spiritual warrior journey. That was a huge awakening for me. That piece. And then the other part was science operates in within the all that is, within our experience. It operates in a framework and in a limited space where it can only talk about, only comment on that which it can observe, measure, and describe. But we live and heal in the all that is, not just in the part science can comment on. So the other awakening I had was I knew I was going to have to look outside of the framework, that science framework, for my healing. I couldn't reference, I'm not saying that I threw out the science part. I'm just saying it showed me it wasn't enough. What I was seeing from the doctors in that framework was not enough. So I needed to look outside. So that was another huge piece for me. The other part of where I to kind of fast forward through that to when I went into a pain management program, and the doctor actually was able to get me off all my pain medications and help me begin to really unwind this addictive stress pattern that I had. I was on a campus with 100 other patients, and 80 people went to relapse school in the afternoon, and the 20 of us that were in pain track in this pain management program, we went into pain track. And I asked my counselor, what am I going to do about relapse school? Because I'm not getting into any of that training. And she said, well, there's an 80% relapse rate in the first year. And I was like, I didn't like the odds to that. I thought, I'm doomed. I'm not going to make it, was kind of where I went at the moment. And the second thing I said was, what's wrong with the model we're using for recovery if this is the best we can do? So in that moment, I vowed that when I got out and got my sea legs and my own recovery, that I would do what I could to move the needle on that relapse rate. And so that's what I do, why I do what I do now. Yeah.
It's so interesting because science, the way that people talk about science is that this is what we found, this is how it works, and then you don't question it.
Well, that's not true.
And you're right, they're missing that vital point. Mm-hmm. Because it is probabilities. It is what else haven't we seen yet? That's why science is always developing, but you have to have an open mind. Otherwise, you're just going to be repeating the same outcome if you keep putting in the same ingredients.
That's right. Yeah. And we the more that we learn within the scientific framework, the wider and different the framework becomes. So that's why it's exciting to be in science, because it has discipline, but it's also ever changing. So I kind of like to sit on the edge of the paradigm. That's why I wanted to go into research, because they hang out there on the edge, right, where the new stuff's happening, right? And I also, from this, just really powerful healing experience that I had, I really began to understand how important it was to be able to straddle both the science and the spiritual. And that they meet in the quantum world. And quantum physics was like, I always wondered, well, where do they meet? They have to meet somewhere. And then nobody understood. Nobody could answer that question for me. And so, but I remember when I first the first time I ran into quantum physics, I was like, aha, this is where the spiritual and the kind of, quote unquote, real world, they meet in this beautiful space. So that to me was a way that science was able to bring more of a unified view. And while we've got one foot in this kind of grounded sciencey space, and we've got this other part of us that's still in the mystery. with this open, we don't know, and that's okay, kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, the quantum world is where all potential lies.
Yeah.
If you compare like Newtonian physics to quantum physics, Newtonian is the old paradigm, is where everybody works according to a certain timeline, certain principles, and things take certain times, certain things need to be done. Whereas if you're in quantum, it just happens like this. And everything
Well,
can shift.
time kind of drops out of
Yeah.
the equation in the quantum of the unified field. Yeah. Which is why so many of the practices that worked for me in my healing, and why so many of the practices that I teach rely on the present moment.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly. Because, well, that's where it is. Because everything comes from memory, your pain is being repeated. And also that's I found interesting because a lot of people think that chronic pain is something you need to overcome, or you need to maybe deal with certain stuff. And I have been finding the last year or so that, because I've been stuck in certain emotional states, that it's just a habit. It's
Exactly.
literally my body going, hey, this is what we always do. So this is why we do
Exactly.
it. I don't even need to know why I'm doing it anymore. I just need to say, listen, body, this isn't a habit anymore. We're not doing that. And it's
Yeah.
like
So that
training.
beautiful. Yeah. That's the value of attention, right? Is our attention on, I'm going to repeat this old habit, or like I'm going to continue to put attention on my stress pattern, and I'm going to continue doing it, or, oh, I'm in that stress pattern again. Let's do something different. And then you're literally retraining the brain and you're working your way out of that habit. I love what you said, because this is fundamental. This is a foundational piece, a core piece of being able to heal from chronic pain, which is physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. You talk about the emotional piece. All those things send the same signal to the brain. It hurts. So it's a state where we're 15 days out of 30 for 3 months or more, we're experiencing some kind of pain. Doesn't necessarily have to be physical. Yeah.
So here's a question. A lot of people say they have to know why they got a certain thing. So I know you do a lot of with ancestral trauma, which we'll get into, but often it could be something you're carrying from previous generations, or it's in your DNA, and that you might need to heal or let go of in some way. But do you have to know what it is? And if you do have to know, is it relating to the physical body or emotional or spiritual body?
Wow. Well, that would be the answer to that would be it depends. It depends. But mostly my experience has been that we store this stuff in the body, whether it's stuff from our immediate past, like our lifetime past, or our lineage. It's stored in the body. So the methods that I use and that have worked for me have been referencing the body's wisdom and getting the mind out of the way. Right? We don't necessarily have to, like, because I do yoga as part of my work. There's a certain kriya that I do that it's really good at it's used actually in hospitals for Alzheimer's patients to help them regain brain function, and stroke patients for the same thing. I use it in the recovery world and the healing world to help break an old habit, and it's called Kirtan Kriya, and we're accessing the fingers, which there's a connection between the hands and the brain, hemispheres of the brain. So when we're working with those, we're actually stimulating the brain. And we say a mantra with that. So it's Satanama, and we just repeat that in a certain fashion. And it's interesting to me. It's kind of a standard a mantra practice, a kriya for me. because I can actually, I don't have to know what the habit is, but the body knows and responds, and the brain knows, and so it will just automatically shift. And I've done 40-day practices of that, just 11 minutes of this Kirtan Kriya, and I haven't necessarily known a specific habit I wanted to shift, but my life changes in these very interesting ways. And I kind of, these things that I used to do, kind of like they turn into something else. So the answer is yes and no, and mostly no, but because the body knows. And if we bring in practices that help the body release that which it's holding, then we naturally shift. And I mean, we do ancestral clearing. We have, there's a bunch of different ways that we use to kind of get at the burden in a specific way. And so we give the mind something to do, but mostly we're also bringing in ways for the body to just, release. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you do meditation, you're bringing yourself into the present state because you're just getting out of your own way and you giving your mind something else to focus on. But if you're doing, let's say you've got Alzheimer's and somebody's forgetful, would it help to be consciously aware of something like that? And could you become less forgetful? For example, if you want to do.
Well, I know that the science on Kirtan Kriya has been specifically around this regaining brain capacity. And my understanding is that it helps with focus.
Okay.
So it better on focus. So not so sure about the memory piece. I'd have to dive into the literature, but right on the top of it, being able to focus here is, that's a staying here and being focused. That's a big thing right there. Also, again, it releases old habits. So if an old habit is stuck around a certain, I don't know. I'm not really sure how the brain works relative to that short-term memory and the loop that the memory gets into in Alzheimer's. My dad had Alzheimer's, and his memory was very short. His ability to focus was very short-term, and the memories he went back to were not really current. They were maybe before I was even born. He would kind of go back into his childhood. And I'm not sure how Kirtan Kriya would actually act on that, but I do know it's very good for focus.
Yeah, that makes sense. So if you had chronic pain, did it start from a trauma that happened, or was it like a gradual thing?
Yeah, actually, so there's a couple things. One is allostatic load, and the other is the stress response. So allostatic load is a measure of how much stress somebody's carrying. And you get a certain, your allostatic load gets to a certain amount, kind of like you've got a backpack with rocks in it and you put one too many rocks in it and now you fall down, that kind of thing. That's a concept. So allostatic load, a measure of how much stress we're carrying. I carried a lot of stress by the time I actually got into that. The other piece of that on the stress response is regular, like the stress response is there for us to handle a perceived or actual threat. So there's physiology and psychology that arises when we that turns on the stress response when we feel threatened or are threatened, and then we meet the threat and the stress response goes into the off position. That would be true of like acute pain. We're dealing with that. It doesn't last very long, and we come down from that. In chronic pain, the stress response gets stuck in the on position, so it's out of balance, and now we're hypervigilant, and we've got chaos in the brain, and we have a pronounced negative, more negative than usual view of our life, of the world, etc. And now we're off to the races. So chronic pain is really about both of those things: allostatic load and stress response. And in my case, both of those things acted for me. I had kind of a emotional pressure as a child, and then I had an accident where I had a actual physical ailment. I had some gut issues as a child as well. They made me drink milk, and I can't digest the base protein in milk, the casein. So I had kind of a perpetual kind of irritable bowel situation. So I had some of that. But when I hurt my back, I had an accident and hurt my back, broke a bone. That really triggered some stuff. And then a year later, I had another emotional incident where my life was threatened, and those were kind of like, that was kind of the cap on that was just like a couple of rocks too many, and then I just got stuck in it. So, to the point where I had to work with doctors and stuff who didn't know what to do with me. But at that time, doctors nowadays have a more integrated model. And they people that specialize in pain management doctors have a more integrated model nowadays. So they have a better understanding of what chronic pain is and how to heal it.
Yeah. I think for doctors, if they don't know the answer, they'll just tell you there's no way to heal because they don't know.
Well, that certainly happened to me, and I had the advantage of having that training, that kind of researchery training, so I was able to work with that. Yeah. Right, but not everybody has that, which is another reason why I come on podcasts like this, so that people have a better grounding in this space as a patient, right?
Well, I think a lot of the problem is that doctors are supposed to know everything. They've done all these studies, and they should be, aware of what the issue is. And because they don't know, they say there is no answer. And I find there's a lot of backlash, maybe even like if you go on Facebook groups and stuff like that, where somebody is helping people with alternative healing, and the doctors are saying, but you're not trained. Who are you to say what to do? We are the ones who are trained. And it's so difficult because you don't have a degree, but that doesn't mean that you didn't heal yourself. So, and I think that is the thing where those things should come together, because alternative healing, definitely from my own experience, is way more powerful because you're taking responsibility for your body instead of outsourcing it to somebody, and you know your body best.
Well, this is where holistic healing comes involved, and comes into play. And this is also where patient responsibility comes in, right? I have to be very cognizant of the person I'm sitting in front of in a healer capacity. I don't care who they are, what kind of healer they are. They have a scope of practice. They have a lens that they're looking up, like I say, the model they're looking through. And so my questions, when I walk into that office with that healer, if I ask a question outside of that, I'm not going to get an answer that's going to kind of work in that model. It's not going to make sense. So I have to kind of understand who I'm sitting in front of and be sensitive to that. The other thing is that, which I loved about Dr. Prescott, who was the guy that took me through pain management. He wrote this beautiful book, Conquer Chronic Pain, an Innovative Mind-Body Approach. He passed away in 2016, but he left us this beautiful book. He was an integrated, holistic doctor and humble. He knew he didn't know everything. And he also knew that the patient knew kind of what was going on in them. And he was very good at bridging that gap and meeting the patient as an equal, not as like, I know it all and you're this, it wasn't like that. He met us where we were and respected kind of the inner workings and understood enough about chronic pain that he knew how to kind of help guide us he wouldn't say he was a healer. He would say he guided us to our own healing. That's what he would
Yeah,
say.
yeah.
Yeah. So
Well,
that's
it
a different kind of doctor that you're talking about. Very
correct.
humble.
That reminds me of the doctors a few hundred years ago that would know the family system. They would get to know what's going on at home, because a lot of the time they'll ask you other questions. If you visit a doctor now, they've got too many patients and too little time.
I know it's really unfair to them. It's unfair to everybody. The whole system's kind of
Correct,
because of that. Yeah.
correct. And also they've been told they're not allowed to do certain things. So therefore it's out of their scope.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Scope of practice.
And they're being limited as well. So yeah, I get that. That's why, when I have my clients, I'm so glad that they have been to see the psychiatrists and the psychologists and they've already done it, so that I don't get told I'm not doing it right because they tried it and it didn't work for them.
Mhm.
Yeah. So what about a person that's born with something? Would you say they would be able to heal it or make it better? Because that wouldn't be a habit then, or would it? Would it be
Um,
something,
Give me an
like,
example.
let's say somebody's born disabled. No, let's say with autism. Let's say someone has autism, because that's quite a big
Oh,
thing, right?
yeah. Wow. Yeah. Well, that's a whole podcast. Um, I mean, yeah.
It's big.
Uh,
Okay,
yeah.
let's
So,
narrow it down. Let's just say ADHD.
well, okay, they're kind of different.
Yeah,
So I'm not a psychiatrist. I don't have a
yeah,
therapy. I'm not a therapist, but I have my point of view. I do have some trauma training. I have heard specialists and doctors that study trauma. Dr. Gabor Mate is it comes to mind after I've trained with him for a year. Um, I've heard him talk about AD because he had it. He was diagnosed with ADHD uh, as a trauma response and had it. So it's a strategy for dealing with trauma. So you
yeah,
get at the root of the trauma, then the nervous system changes. Because this is ADHD is this lack of focus. Remember where we've been talking about focus. We were talking about Kurt Cree in terms of helping focus, right? It not only
absolutely.
helps shift. I forgot to tell you that part. It not only helps shift, it helps the brain rewire into something new. It helps. With focus. So that would be an example of. Now I have other people that I know that have ADHD and they take medication for it, and that's their choice. So there's a lot going on around ADHD these days, and I think that the jury's still out as
Yeah,
to the best way to treat it, but I believe it's treatable. It's not, we can, we can find a new way to live. The
yeah,
brain, what's cool about the brain is that it's responsive in the moment. It's just instantly, it absolutely shifts to whatever's happening now. That's where it tends to. Now, it has the imprint of the past, the momentum, these imprints from the past in it, right? But our choices that we make in this moment, they determine whether we're working on rebuilding a new way to live or we go back into the old patterns. That's the power of understanding that territory, how powerful the brain is. It's amazing. And it can change. I remember when I first got into physiological psychology as like a freshman in college. At that time, the understanding tells you how scientific paradigms shift, right? At that time, the understanding was that the brain was fixed. They didn't understand that the brain was plastic and had this ability to change it. They just did not have it. They have it now. It's that came in like the 90s, kind of the early 90s that shifted there. But understanding the power of that as a patient is huge, because now I have empowered myself because I'm understanding oh, I have this incredibly sensitive, powerful uh, system in my body that's responsive to my environment and my choices. And now I have empowerment where I was, for a long time, I was thinking the pain's doing it to me. Right? I'm a victim of it. Or that's not actually 100% true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I watched a TikTok the other day, and this lady said she had chronic pain for years, and she was still young. She's still young. She said that she just says to herself, "Turn it off," and then it goes away. And I thought, well, if it's that simple, let me try it. And I've been doing that. And every time I have a pain or an ache somewhere, I just say to myself, "Turn it off," and it goes. It's
That's
just
interesting.
that simple.
That's interesting.
That's
I would have tried a slightly different. I would try something slightly different. So I'm not trying to make the pain go away, particularly because it's information.
yes.
So, but my issue with pain is I resist it. So it's kind of like, what do I need to do to allow it to be what it is and stop fighting with it? And when I do that, the pain, it actually turns from this. Imagine, I've used this metaphor before. Imagine Niagara Falls trying to get through a pipe. That would be pain in the presence of my resistance to it,
Yeah.
right? And when I stop resisting, the pipe comes off of Niagara Falls and it can flow freely. So I actually feel energy instead of pain when I allow it to be what it is, which is a different way of saying what you're saying, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think on her part it was more stopping the habit of the body bringing up this pain and her saying, "Oh no, we don't do that anymore." You know, I think from that angle, I agree with you. I think the resistance is what causes it to perpetuate because it's trying to tell you something, you know,
Exactly. Yeah, it's
and not
information.
paying
So
attention. Yeah, it's
yeah,
information.
so I have a friend and teacher named Gudaprem Singh Khalsa who says um, uh, pain is the currency of transformation. Be
Yeah.
careful how you spend it. You know? Yeah.
Yeah.
So pain is information. What are you going to do with
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
Right? Are you going to put your attention on it and let it grow? Because, we put our attention on, that it grows, right?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
are we going to try and teach the brain something new? Yeah.
Yeah. So, would you say, because you mentioned that you had an addiction as well, was that the addiction to the pain or was it addiction to painkillers?
Oh, well, the stress habit, the
Stress
habit.
habit.
Yeah. And they put then, and I was on opiates and benzodiazepines for years because that was their answer. And I didn't have anybody else give me an answer. And then it was like, I'd rather get off this stuff because it feels like it's making me sicker than just dealing with the pain. And then I had trouble getting off it. And I was like, okay, now I'm in trouble. And that's why I went to Dr. Prescott. It's like, because he knew how to get people off that. And that was the
Yeah.
last 15 years of that was fentanyl. So that was, you're not going to meet too many people who are on fentanyl for 15 years
No,
and live to
no,
tell the story. Yeah.
no. That's amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
because you say you worked with Dr. Gabor Mate as well. What was that like?
Well, he has a compassionate inquiry year-long training that he does. And then after that year long, there's a mentorship that's kind of specific to people that are therapists. I'm not a therapist. I'm a coach and a specialist, but I'm not there. I don't have the degree, right? Therapist degree. But I worked with him for a year and I loved it because, um, what was super special about that practice was his approach to just working with another person was whatever was showing up in the moment was okay. There wasn't any judgment. And the other thing that I loved was, like, there was no judgment, pain's bad, or you're bad because you don't know how to deal with pain. There wasn't any of that stuff. There was no even hint of that. And the other thing was, there was no agenda. There was no, okay, you come in and you ask the client if they have an intention for the session. But as a therapist, I'm not trying to get them, or so as a coach, as a compassionate inquiry practitioner, I'm not trying to get them from point A to B on my, in my model. I'm letting them go at their pace, the way they want to. And I just love that, because it opens this space that's just healing on a level that I just hadn't experienced before.
Yeah. So you are now, do you still experience chronic pain, or is it completely gone?
No, I walked into that pain management program with 40 years of chronic pain, and I walked out 52 days later with no pain.
That's amazing.
And it wasn't like, I'm so special. He had a 94% success rate in that program. So
yeah,
the methods work. And he never promised me that my pain would go away. It blew me away. I was like, what is happening here? This is great. But he promised me he could help me reset my stress response, which was, of course, perpetuating the pain, the way my stress response was stuck in the on position. He got it so it was back balanced again.
Yeah, so if you reduce the stress response, then your body will stop reacting, and then you won't get sick again. Yeah.
The balance. You got to keep the stress. Yeah. Yeah, because we need a stress response.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
But it's also, it's not to react, but rather to respond to things.
Yes, it's managing our stress in a healthy way. And I'm not saying that I don't get stressed and my stress response doesn't go on. It just doesn't get stuck in the on position anymore.
Yeah. Which is what the doctors say you cannot do. Or that's what I've been told once it's on. And I understand if you don't have the tools to do it, then you can't switch it off.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And if you don't have the kind of understanding of kind of what's happening in the brain there, how are you going to approach it? What tools are you going to, because it's like the doctors kept focusing on my back because that was where the pain was. But as Dr. Prescott pointed out, you can have 3 different patients with x-rays that look just like mine, back x-rays, with broken bone, dislocated, all that stuff. And you'll have one patient that has pain all the time. You'll have another one that has pain only when they're stressed, and you'll have the other one doesn't have pain at all. How do you explain that by just looking at the back, at the x-ray? You can't.
Yeah.
This is why we have to understand that there's a mind, body, spirit is one as a system, and we need to bring a holistic, integrated approach. This is why the reductionist model doesn't actually work.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that people like you are doing this kind of work. And and Dr. Gabor Mate, because he also went through his own healing as well.
Yes.
I mean, he's got a lot to share on that as well. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I actually read a book about healing your spine. I can't remember who the author was, but he said the same thing. He said there are people with bulging. Yes.
John Sarno. And then Dr. Joe Dispenza, he rebuilt his back. He had a back kind of mine.
Yeah.
And he does a lot of interesting stuff with he has a little different methods than I do, but he's got a wicked meditation thing going on. It's very powerful. Yeah. Very powerful. So he understands the power of What's cool about his work is he's documenting all of it. He's working with all these people and he's documenting all of it. So he's getting some science, some beautiful science studies done as he does this work with these people.
Yeah.
It's great.
Well, I don't think it's a coincidence. I think it's starting to, like I say, we need that integration, and working with the science is proving it. Having the sonars and having the ECG, EEG machines, all of that is helping them to see that it actually works. I think Greg Braden also did um, he did healing with some Chinese monks on a lady who had a tumor in her stomach, but he had
Wow.
a sonar with the tumor, a photograph, and with it in real time. And it took them 8 minutes,
Uh-huh.
and that entire tumor just shrinks. And he captured it on video, and you can actually see it on YouTube. So
That's
that's quite
awesome.
nice because
Yeah,
you can see it happening real time.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen that. I've seen some other interesting things that have come out of that part of the world. Um, it's very impressive.
Yeah.
Also, what I heard from Dr. Dr. Peter Prescott, when he was obviously when he was alive, was that the Chinese, because he was a Qigong healer, Chinese don't have a word for chronic pain. They don't, it's not a thing. The Filipinos don't have a word. It's not a phenomenon. And I was like, wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So that's, you know, that
Yeah.
to me is like, I would love to sit down and talk with a couple of people that do the kind of Greg Bain healing, the kind of those
Yeah.
guys, and ask them
Yeah.
about what's happening with chronic pain in your world, and see what they would say. What's chronic pain? You're like, like I don't know what they would say about that.
Interesting.
But it's
Yeah,
interesting
because
that there's just don't even have they don't have a term for it. So
yeah. Well, that actually made me think because you said you had a is it lactose intolerance? Yeah.
well,
Do you
actually,
still have
it's
that?
casein. I can't digest the base protein, which is casein.
The casein. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Has that changed at all, or is that still the same?
No, no, I came in with those genes. That's part of my, yeah, that hasn't changed. I really don't eat dairy products because of that. Um, I I could get away with having a ghee, but I don't really like the taste of it. So, which is just the fat from the
Yeah.
milk. That wouldn't have any casein in it.
Yeah.
But I don't like the taste of it. So, and I'm kind of put off from dairy, but it's not surprising. My body's like, don't give me that, So I'm okay, I won't. We'll do
Yeah.
something else.
Well, there's enough other food. No, I'm just wondering how much impact the food has on your body with chronic pain as well, because
Oh, a lot.
nowadays, especially with gluten intolerance and all these things, that can also lead to inflammation.
Oh, a lot. Yeah. I we turned it. One of the things that I work with a functional doctor, and one of the things that we found out when I got out of Dr. Prescott's program, shortly afterwards, we did some testing, and just to kind of see what was happening with my diet. And we found out I have a very sensitive anti-inflammatory response. So I have to be very careful, or sorry, inflammatory response. So I have to be very careful about eating any inflammatory diet foods for that diet has to be this. Otherwise, I can actually feel it in the body. I can kind of feel a kind of a low grade burning in the fascia when I
Yeah.
when I'm taking eating foods that are inflammatory. So yeah, diet's huge. Diet was a huge piece. It wasn't the only piece, but it was certainly absolutely a piece. And we have to, and also hydration. We have to be hydrated. The body's got to be. It makes a big difference in terms of the body being able to heal and function properly with adequate hydration.
Yeah, absolutely. Because a lot of people think that they get muscle spasm because they don't have enough salt, but it's often because they have too much salt
Yeah,
and they
well,
don't
yeah,
have
the
enough
water,
water.
yeah, yeah, dehydrated. Yeah, that's Yeah, when that happens to me, I'm like, oh, I forgot to drink, right? And I'm not just saying pure water. You want to have a little bit of sea salt in there, a little bit of just you've got your electrolytes, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's important.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So you wrote a book, The Way Through Chronic Pain. What insights or teaching do you want the readers to get from the book?
Well, the thing that it just in addition to the things that I talked about here today, the thing I think is the really core theme there is the greatest heal in your body lives within you. And doctors, and nurses and all the different healthcare people, they give us their best understanding of what they think the best conditions are for us to help us set up the way we need to live in order to heal, and it's up to us to implement those suggestions. So we have to really take this. We have to be responsible. We have to take, we have to step into taking responsibility for, just like we need to take responsibility when we walk into a healer's office, to understand they have a scope of practice they can talk about, and anything outside of that they really can't. So let's be fair to them and us at the same time.
Absolutely.
And work in that model, right? We also have to take responsibility for doing whatever we can to set the conditions for the body's ability to heal and to get out of the way, right? So the reference, because when I started, just because of the way I was raised, it was like, when you get sick, go see the doctor. When you get sick, go see the doctor. So I'm always looking at the doctor, not understanding that the healer is in the body. The doctor's just kind of pointing the way, to helping the body to, do its, but I didn't get that in my mind. So I'm constantly looking at, we get this codependent relationship with healers, and that's not helpful because the healing power is in here. Doctors can set a bone and stitch up a wound, but they can't tell the body how to heal. Only the body can do that, right? So that orientation, that's a really key piece in terms of just what I'd like listeners to remember. And then you meet them as these healers, as healing people, as collaborators, as equals. They know what they know, and you know what you know, and you work together, right, with them, and try and tap the inherent healing power in the body.
Yeah. Well, medicine doesn't heal you. It just takes away the symptoms, allowing your body to heal. It paves the way for the healing, but it doesn't do the actual healing.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well
said. Do you have any stories from somebody that you've worked with that you just found to be so transformational that you could share? Something.
Oh yeah. Well, I would say my favorite, the thing that feels the most powerful to me is when I see a new client and they come in and they've got so much, dysregulation. They're so amped up and nervous. And they're really feeling victimized by their experience. And really, just to share with them, to take them through 3 minutes of long, deep breathing, focused breathing, and that like really all I have to do is do what I'm doing. And they feel the nervous system, because there's this magical connection between a long exhale and the brain and the body's relaxation response. So they don't know about that, so they don't know how to use that, right? So you take them into that, and their body they feel the body start to calm down. And they suddenly realize that they have power. They can change their state. And so instead of feeling completely, disempowered and overwhelmed and victimized by their pain, all of a sudden, within 3 minutes, they've got a sense of, oh my God, I have power here after all, right? I love that. that's,
Yeah.
that's my favorite thing is to because the look on their face is, and oh my God, the body remembers how to relax. I mean, I can remember because I used to have panic attacks and stuff. I can remember when I learned how to do this, I was like, we should be teaching this to kindergartners. This is so basic, right? Yeah.
So
So
does that deep breathing help panic attacks?
well, actually, in that space, you want to do just left nostril breathing, breathing long, deep, and evenly through the left nostril, which stimulates the calming center in the brain, and you're bringing in the long exhale, so that brings you're hitting it from the nervous system from two angles there. So left nostril breathing when you start feeling like the panic is starting to arise. Yeah.
Wow, interesting. So you do ancestral healing as well. What is that? What does that involve?
Wow. Well, that's a whole another hour or another 20 minutes at least. So ancestral clearing is an energy healing modality that or energy medicine really modality that was pioneered by a man named Howard Wills and was further developed and is taught by John Newton at Health Beyond Belief, and I'm one of his practitioners. We access the present moment. That's a piece of the practice. We also we're actually asking source or consciousness or God or creator or whatever you want to call whatever made all of this. We actually ask it to help us release that which no longer serves us. So we work with that, and we're addressing burden from the past, whether it's our past or whether it's in the lineage. So that's like a tiny thumbnail of what that practice is, and I was very surprised at my first experience of it. I had no idea what was coming. I had my science hat on, so I'm like, what is happening? You know, what is going on here? What's the method? Like, how does it feel? And I had an experience, and I had an experience where I felt my own pain dissolve, and I noticed everybody else in the room is having this experience, and we're all chronic pain sufferers. John was actually in Dr. Peter's program at the time. So all of us were in there detoxing from our medications and learning to deal with our chronic pain. So he came in and helped us address the ancestral burden that we were carrying, and then any other burden we were carrying in from the past. And it was astonishing to me. I was like, I felt the room shift, the energy in the room shift, and I thought, remember, science mind, but also detoxing. So I was like, it feels like something's happening here, but I'm detoxing and my brain isn't even normal yet. So I guess I just imagined all of that. That was, and then I get to the end of the process, and everybody, and I felt my own pain, dissolve. And then and everybody else is reporting in the room that their pain had dropped down significantly. And I was like, okay, something did happen in this room, and I felt it, and apparently so did they. And like, what was it? And can he reproduce this? And is this measurable? And like, how can we study this? I was just like, I went there. I was just so surprised. So I went and took the first training that I could. Yeah, I saw him again and again. I saw him do that process in the however many days I was 45 days or whatever it was. I was in the treatment program. I saw this.
How is that? Is that different to family constellations? Is it?
It's a cousin. It's not the same because I'm actually studying Mark Wolyn's book right now. So I'm taking a group through that book, and it's beautiful work, and it's similar, but it's not the same. we're actually bringing in, we're actually creating a prayer to Creator to help us, and asking it to help us release that which no longer serves us. So it's very similar in terms of like the stuff that Mark Woolen talks that family constellations works on, but our method is different.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but we're both looking at the same kind of burden. Yeah, and we don't have like different people playing parts or we don't have any of that. It's just a different method. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds very interesting.
Yeah, I can give the listeners an experience of it here just for a moment. It would just take me
Yeah,
like 2 minutes to go through.
that would be amazing. Sure.
We'll just do one because this is we use the word in this practice. We use the word forgive to mean we're offering up to Creator that which no longer serves us. So offering up that which no longer serves us, and we're asking it to help us release. We're not asking it to take anything away. We're asking it to help us release. Right. So we're still, just so we understand kind of the mechanics of it. And this is an ancestral clearing for clearing the effects of intergenerational trauma. So everyone listening to this, if you can just notice in the body what sensations you're feeling. I can feel my sitting bones on the chair and my feet on the floor, and I have a little bit of minor kind of pressure in my belly. And I'm going to give that, all of that, a number. Give your whatever sensation you're feeling a number of intensity from 0 to 10. And remember the number, and just breathe normally and let these words wash over you. Higher power, Creator, Holy Father, Great Spirit, Divine Mother, Infinite One, Oneness. You're known by many names, yet you are one. We ask humbly and gratefully for us and all our ancestors and all their relations through all space, time, dimension, realms, lifetimes, and incarnations. For all sickness and the ensuing grief and suffering, for the times we stood powerless and unable to help ease the pain of our loved ones, for survivor's guilt in plagues and pandemics that swept through our lives and our communities. Please help us all to forgive one another and forgive ourselves. Please and thank you. For all misunderstandings, disputes, arguments, fights that broke out and resulted in injuries, whether intentional or unintentional. For all the guilt anyone carried because of it. For every raid, assault, incursion, battle, war, and Holocaust, and for all the angst, the betrayals, the fierce anger, and any guilt we felt because of all these actions, or guilt others felt because of our actions. For all unresolved resentment, ensuing aversions, loathing, or outright hate that erupted and continued unrelentingly, intergenerationally. Please help us all to forgive one another and forgive ourselves for once and for all of it, no matter what it was. Please and thank you. For all hidden secrets, pacts, for the times we were sworn to silence under duress, for any abuse, slavery, torture, or any other injustice, and all that arose in the lineage because of these events, including physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual abuse, illness. Please help us all forgive each other and forgive ourselves. Please and thank you. Please help us release one another and release ourselves and find peace with one another and find peace with ourselves for once and for all, now and forever. Please and thank you. Please and thank you. Please and thank you. And just take a nice big breath in and let it out and notice how that feels in the body compared to where you started, big or small or different.
That was amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, I love this practice. It really, my poor science mind is like, how can this possibly work? And yet my body's like, thank you.
Yeah, my body just felt like it just relaxed so into the chair.
That's right.
Just
Yeah.
go.
Yeah. It's pretty special. And if I had the funds and the wherewithal, I would do a total science study on this. I would be doing all kinds of measurements and heart brain cohesion things, and I would be like finding out
Well,
what's
there's
happening.
ways. There are ways to get people involved.
There are. I'm actually working with a local group, and we're working with the heart math as an actual heart brain
Yeah,
cohesion measure of the
yeah,
work we're doing.
doesn't I think Joe Dispenza does work with them, if I'm not mistaken.
It wouldn't
Yeah.
surprise me. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well,
So,
I do constellations. That's why I'm asking, because working within that energy field is so powerful. And I
hmm,
actually did one on Sunday night with a family member and her
mhm.
daughter. And this girl is a different person. And the
Oh,
last
absolutely.
3 days, she's totally changed. And I said, look, let's see how it goes, but I know the answer.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that the work is so powerful. I feel like A, we're working in the present moment. Both methods are working in the present moment.
Yeah.
And B, the other thing that both methods are doing is we're actually acknowledging what happened. It's not a secret anymore. And we're both methods are doing it in a safe container. So
Yeah.
we are traumatized in unsafe relationships. We heal in safe relationships. So we're talking about a trinity of things that makes it very powerful, makes both of these practices very powerful. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Wow. Well, thank you for that. Where can people get hold of you?
Oh, they can find me at my website, which is my name, Elizabeth with a hyphen. You got to put a dash in there, Elizabeth-Kipp.com. Yep. All my social media is up there. You can book an introductory session with me. There's ancestral clearing prayers up there. There's all kinds of free resources. Yep.
Yeah. No, I'll post all of those details below. Do you have a final message for the viewers if they wanted to maybe start on their journey or learn, want to know
Oh, well,
something?
yes. In addition to like the greatest healer lives within you, also please, ask for help because there are people that know the way in this territory. And uh, you know, family constellation people, amazing. The kind of work that you do, Natasha, ancestral clearing, straight up chronic pain, anybody working in the chronic pain in a kind of holistic way. They understand and they're most of us have been there and done that. So we actually have charted a path, and we can help you do that. And that, I think that's really important that we all understand. We have to believe more in the power of our ability to heal than we do in the power of the disease that we're experiencing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. And just because you found a doctor who maybe doesn't know doesn't mean there aren't doctors who don't know, because there are. There are a lot of people out there. And it's like having a good teacher. So, you might have some really bad teachers, but there'll be those who really know their stuff. And you will always remember them.
That's right. Yeah. I would say ineffective teachers. Yeah. I would
Yeah.
say teachers that are effective and those that are ineffective. And it kind of depends on who I am and where I am in my journey as to
Yeah.
whether, they're effective or not. And
Yeah.
how can I receive? That's one of the problems we have as chronic pain people, at least that I've experienced with myself and with other clients and other kind of co-patients in the space. Oh, we're very hesitant to receive because we've been let down so much, which is one of the things we clear for in ancestral clearing is let down in the lineage, right? There's so
Interesting.
yeah. So being able to receive is a big piece, and we're so guarded in that chronic pain space. Look at me, I'm like this. Well, you can't connect when you're doing this. It's kind of like
Yeah.
I can't rest and run at the same time. It's like you can't when you're guarded like this, you can't connect. So this is why a safe space is so important because then we open.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. It makes sense because if you're blocked, you're literally blocking the flow of the body, and so everything just gets stuck.
That's right. Yeah,
And isn't pain stuckness? It's stuck energy.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
It's not, like I said, it's when my resistance to the pain is up, that's when we had that high density. When I no longer am resisting this, whatever, like I had a broken wrist and as I was healing, it was swollen and stuff. And I had to go into meditation to allow it to get myself so that I wasn't resisting it, trying to fight with it, and just allowed it to be. And with this thing's all swollen up and everything, all it was energy. I was like, this is amazing. Right? But that's how powerful it is when we get the mind and our judgments out of the way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I feel so relaxed now. So
Awesome.
I always love having interesting guests on the show because I get to pick their brain and I get to have healing sessions too.
I love it. I love it.
It's lovely.
Well, so nice to meet you, Natasha. I appreciate being a guest on your show.
Yeah, no, you're welcome. And thank you for joining me. Thank you.
Take care, Natasha. Bye now.
Bye. Bye. If you enjoyed this content, please subscribe to the channel below. It helps YouTube to send you more content like this, and you'll be the first to know when a new video is released. To watch my most recent uploads, click on the cards above.